Good afternoon. Thank you so much for joining us. My name is James Goodwill Pierre. You are here. Thank you for joining us for another event, this time virtual lunchtime event for success in business. We have a great program for you, a great speaker. It's all about mental health. I've been wanting to do this since 2018, and I'm just excited finally. So before COVID, business owners, especially minority women business owners, disadvantaged business owners, and mental health has always been sort of a passion for me ever since I opened my own business. But it's been a passion for me, just like doing success in business, connecting minority women, small business owners to decision makers and resources that can help them grow their business. Often I focused on those tangible things, connecting people with stakeholders, individuals in government agencies, loan agencies, resource agencies, but never had an opportunity to talk about internally, other than when I did my resiliency workshop of the internal factors to help your business grow, those non-tangible items. And so I'm excited to talk about today one of those things, as I stated, that has been a passion of mine since 2018, and that is mental health, and in particular the mental health of those small women and disadvantaged business owners. Before I introduce our speaker, I want to read this excerpt of an article from therapybrands.com. July is National Mental Health Awareness Month. In 2008, the United States House of Representatives established the month of July as National Minority Mental Health Awareness Month, according to the National Alliance on Mental Health. The goal of the resolution was to improve access to mental health treatment and services and promote public awareness of mental illness, and to enhance public awareness of mental illness and mental illness among minorities. Although there have been strides to make healthcare accessible for all Americans, inequities still exist, especially for minority communities. And we found this out just in dealing with COVID-19. According to the Agency for Healthcare Research and Quality, minority groups in the US are less likely to have access to mental health services, less likely to use community mental health services, more likely to use emergency departments, and more likely to receive lower quality care. Poor mental health care access and quality of care contribute to poor mental health outcomes, including suicide among racial and ethnic minority populations. Just a couple of statistics. Recent statistics highlight the need to address a solution now more than ever. According to the American Psychiatric Association, ethnic racial minorities often bear a disproportionately high burden of disability resulting from mental disorders. People who identify as being two or more races, 24.9%, are most likely to report any mental illness within the past year than any other racial ethnic group, followed by American Indians, Alaskan Natives, 22.7%, white 19%, and black 16.8%. Additional factors affecting access to treatment by members of diverse ethnic racial groups may include lack of insurance, underinsurance, mental health stigma, often greater among minority populations, lack of diversity among mental health care providers, lack of cultural competent providers, language barriers, distrust in the healthcare system, inadequate support for mental health services in safety net settings, uninsured Medicaid health insurance coverage, and other vulnerable patients. I want to bring to you a wonderful professional, and I'm going to read a little bit of her bio. She's going to speak to us. We're going to have a discussion, but we're also going to take opportunity every 10 minutes from the discussion to field questions that you may have. Miriam Harris, PhD, LPC, NCC, is a board certified psychotherapist that specializes in addiction, childhood mood disorders, and personality disorders. In her 6 years as a therapist, she became trained in dialectical behavior therapy and trauma-informed coursework. She is currently a therapist for the Bob Woodrow Foundation, providing cognitive processing therapy to veterans affected by Hurricane Harvey. She was recognized as a recipient of the TRIO Achievement Award in 2020. Dr. Harris received her doctorate in counselor education and supervision from Michigan State University, her master's in clinical mental health from a CACREP accredited program at the University of Houston, Victoria. She has had opportunity to become the first LPC intern chosen to treat veterans with post-traumatic syndrome at the Michael E. DeBakey Hospital in Houston, and developed the first benzodiazepine education program. In her tenure as a therapist, she has found that her theoretical approach to treatment is eclectic and diverse, solution focused, person-centered, and dialectical behavior therapy are her core interventions. Dr. Harris has been in private practice since 2017. She currently is the administrator for a community-based mental health program focusing on clients with minimal access to mental health services. Her Nirvana Behavioral Solutions treatment model is purpose-driven community access, stable housing, and mental health. Each topic is integrated into treatment modality that empowers, inspires, and mentors clients to become self-sufficient. Without further ado, please welcome Dr. Miriam Harris. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm happy to be here.
Thank you. One of the things I want to start first with Dr. Harris is to really have an open discussion. Um, we're talking about mental illness, especially in minority communities. I would like to focus on the particular effects it has on those minority communities who own businesses, whether they're mom and pop, whether they have a lot of employees. My first question is, can you provide to us some type of definition of what mental illness, mental health, or anything that a minority business owner can look to identify that something is wrong with them? Or is that proper for me to even speak that way?
That's a really good question, and actually, that's part of the cultural competency of a lot of what mental wellness or mental health is. So obviously, you know that culturally speaking, there's a huge stigma in our community on what is mental health, and so words such as crazy, uh, problem, that's a problem, this is a problem, or just irrational thinking in general. Obviously, in the age of activism where we are now, and that constant fight of social justice and equality, we tend to be more hyper vigilant or have this sense of urgency. And so that can have a huge impact on your mental health and what we call in the mental health community burnout. And so some of the things that you want to look for is when things that you're doing currently is affecting your activities for daily living, such as having problems getting up in the morning, doing simple things like brushing your teeth, showering, or it could be something more complex like feelings of doubt. um, I would say from the perspective of a minority business owner, and then very much as a Black woman, one of the things that I struggle with is what we call imposter syndrome. And what imposter syndrome does is it will be this inner voice, or for some it'll be pictures, because some of us don't have an inner voice that will tell me that I don't have a seat at the table, which is a lot of what we say, or something like what I'm providing or who I am is not enough. And a lot of that is systemic, right? A lot of that is cultural. But in terms of mental health and what you should be looking for is just kind of listening to yourself. And once you get to know yourself, there's something that's within you that doesn't feel right. Okay. And right is a subjective word again when we're talking about mental health, but it's impeding on your activities for daily living.
One of the things that drives me, I'm a lawyer. I also do consulting for a lot of government agencies. And I used to work for a government agency. In fact, I enjoyed it helping, serving people. But when I came out on my own, first as general counsel for a minority women-owned business, and then also what I do now, uh, one of the things that personally I dealt with is oftentimes feeling alone. I've hired a bunch of individuals, or I'm having conversation with my wife and children. It seems like when I worked for someone versus on my own, I had and I don't even know if I call it depression or what, but I will just start with the loneliness feeling that no one understood what the hell I was trying to do, especially my staff and employees. And so why am I even bother doing this if no one really understands? I feel by myself. You know, is that something that is and here again, use these words, normal as a business owner? Is it unique to minorities because of this, the systemic things that go on with us feeling like we don't belong?
There's this saying that I like to use. It's emotions are good consultants, but lousy CEOs. And I like to use that in business because you have to consider that um, their input should not be taken charge. So your emotions should not be allowed. I mean, obviously, this is something that we can't control, but it shouldn't be allowed to take control of how you make your decisions on a daily basis. That
Mhm.
is one of the biggest, I think, for a minority business owner, one of the biggest issues that I also struggle with, because we tend to take on this identity where we've got to fix everything, and then who's fixing us? It's kind of like that old saying, I'm pouring into others, but I'm coming from an empty vessel. So
Mhm.
you've got to be able to figure out. Here again, I'm saying figure out because some of us don't have those coping skills, right? Some of us don't even have the support system, like you said, maybe your spouse, your children, the people that you're surrounded by. All of us are trailblazers, so we don't really have that person to look back on it, that mentor. um what you're doing now, this type of forum, it allows us to connect as people, and it allows us to see that yes, we are business owners, but we're also humans. And just having that connection, it's healthy connection, and it allows us to kind of bounce ideas off of each other and saying, hey, Mr. Google, um how are you feeling today? And you can say something like, I'm struggling with the fact that I don't know if this pandemic is going to affect my clients, or how is it affecting my employees. And I can say something like, it's also affecting my employees. And then once you're kind of going back and forth, kind of what I call brain dumping, you'll identify that there are some similarities. And that's how you come up with solutions. I think having a core group of people that you can go to, I like to call them consultants or collaborators. Um, you know, not necessarily in the same field, because at the same time, as you and I are consulting, I'm identifying that what you're struggling with, I'm also struggling with.
Mhm. Yeah, I'm gonna stop right now. I mean, you hit so much in that response, but I'm going to stop right now and see if anybody would like to ask a question. Take a couple of questions from the audience. And would anyone like to ask a question? You could feel free just to speak up for Dr. Harris. Either raise your hand or just ask a question. Naomi.
Uh, I'm just thankful for this session today because just a little bit that we've talked about just helped me have a few ahas. Just knowing that even you, Mr. Goodwill, at this point in your career and you as a business owner with so much that you do, that you still go through some of the same things that I wake up with every day. And so I'm just glad to have this conversation today. So it's not really a question, but it's really thankful that I tuned in. Just this first 20 minutes, I've gotten a lot that's just making me say, okay, you know what? Yeah, I'm not in this alone.
Yeah,
This is something that we're going through.
I appreciate that. You know what, Dr. Harris, one of the things that when I first got out of law school, and even now, when I talk to especially a lot of business owners, we like to say, fake it till you make it, fake it till you make it, even if you don't have, even though you're not where you are, make people think that you where you are, because people don't like to give business to people who are not where they want them to be. Spiritually speaking, when I go to church, I attend church, the pastor says, speak to that which is not as if it were. You know what I mean? But yet you still trying to, look for people. You have a $10,000 receivable, and if you mention to someone, they'll look at you thinking $10,000, that ain't nothing. Or, you still trying to put gas in your car, but you don't want no one to know because you got a brand new Mercedes. How does the faking it till you're making it, or the operation in daily life to give business, or reconcile that with mental health? I mean, can you operate? How can I operate as a business person, faking it till I make it in itself as mental issues, but still maintain my health so I don't get lost in the game?
Well, two things I heard you say, and when you said it, I thought about what I call chronic mistrust. So chronic mistrust is a common after effect of trauma and betrayal. And basically, what happens is it breeds paranoia and loneliness. And so I'll say that again: chronic mistrust. So that's our fake it till we make it. We, as minority business owners, we chronically mistrust what's called a system, right? Because we know that we're looking in the media, we're looking in our communities, we're looking in our homes, and we're identifying that a lot of us are faking it till we make it, right? And what's happening is it's breeding paranoia. That's all from the trauma of seeing that. And that paranoia, or I guess another word for that would be me pretending like I don't see what's really in front of me, right? Or I think that there's something there and it's not. And so I think the only way that we can thrive in situations like that is when we actually look back at ourselves and say, okay, I identify that there's an issue. And that issue, I call those red flags. And I tell my clients, don't paint those red flags white. When you see those red flags, identify what they are. You can call them whatever you want. Some people call them triggers, some people call them red flags. But once you identify what they are, then you begin to see where's the source, right? For many of us, the source is we are minorities, right? And we're being taught that as a minority, we should kind of be low maintenance, right? We shouldn't ask for much. We should be thankful for the things that we have, right? But I want what everybody else has. I want the bins. I want, I want to be able to pull up to a nice house in Memorial. But I think with the chronic mistrust, what that does is it creates a situation where we become low maintenance. And
Mm,
so identifying what that trigger is, what is that voice? What is that voice telling you?
mm,
Um, and so yeah, that's that, and I think that's a huge challenge. That's why I want to say, and I want to say this just from the perspective of a therapist, but a therapist who has a therapist. Seek help. Don't allow that to manifest in your life and hold you back, because we all struggle with those traumas, whether they be big traumas or little traumas. But they exist, and just asking for help is the first step in us kind of taking down those walls.
how do you know when you need help?
That's
Like sometimes, literally, and I'll just do a quick thing about my father, who he's 80 years old. He just just this in February we rushed him to the hospital because he had something wrong with his heart, because he doesn't like dentists. He didn't go to the dentist, and so his gums affected his blood, which affected his heart. Now this man has never gone to the hospital in 80 years. Part American, part West Indian, and so he's gone through pain, and so he didn't know that he needed help until one of us had to take him to the hospital. As a business owner, and I'm not going to even get into gender. This is talk about minority business owners just across the board, because I know there's certain differences. Um, how do I know that I need help versus getting over it like this other business person did? You know what I mean? How do I know? It's different for everyone. How do I know?
Well, for first of all, you need to make sure that you identify your needs. What are those needs? Where am I deficient? Am I jumping to conclusions? Do I have all the information that I need in order to make a rational decision on whether or not this is something that I can't move forward with? And then you need to determine whether it's a bump in the road or it's the end of the road, if that makes sense. And so you want to look at it from a third person perspective. And I know people used to say, there's nothing wrong with talking to yourself as long as you don't answer back. Well, no, you need to answer back, because that's your inner voice telling you that something isn't right. I think you need to identify needs. You need to ask yourself, what am I feeling right now? You know, and have that honest conversation. One thing I know about therapists, most of us do free consultations. I know I do. And it's a free 15-minute phone call, virtual, in person, where you go talk to someone and say, this is what I'm thinking. Is this normal? And depending on your situation, you know, it could be it could be normal, it could be abnormal. But what abnormal is relevant to the person. And because a lot of us in this room come from various backgrounds, I come from a biracial background. So I have a Creole father and a Portuguese mother. Normal in our house was yelling, screaming, hollering at each other because we were just loud talkers. People would come in the room and say, "Oh, you guys are so loud. You guys are so country." That's how we communicate. We were in the store, someone would be like, "Look at that family over there shouting at each other." So you have to remember, culturally speaking, what is normal. And if inside of you there is an imbalance in the sense that you can't perform those normal activities that you normally would, that's when you need to seek help. So like I said, don't jump to conclusions, get all the information, distinguish a bump in the road as opposed to the end of the road. Is this something that I'm just going through? Like they say, is it a lesson or a blessing? You know, which one, you know what I'm saying? And then asking yourself, is there anything that I should be learning from this? Also understanding that with minorities, we tend not to ask for help, right? We want to take on every task and advocate for everyone else, and then we go home and we figure out, well, shoot, I don't really know what I'm doing, right? So just going out there and seeking some of these, they have online portals. Sondermind is one of them, right? You can go on Sondermind and get free 15-minute virtual consultations. But just going out there and seeking people that look like yourself and just kind of debriefing with them.
It's great. As I'm opening the floor for other questions, I just want to remind Dr. Harris, please put your information in the chat for everyone so they can reach you, and we'll also give you an opportunity to let them know about your practice and where it's located. The format for those who are just coming on is I have some set questions to kind of prime the conversation, usually 2 or 3, and then I stop 10 minutes, 7 minutes to allow anyone else on the line to give comments or ask questions. And this is the second round. So anyone who would like to ask a question or give a comment, please, the floor is yours. Anybody? It could be anything.
Well, I'm gonna take advantage of this opportunity.
Right, Neil.
So Dr. Harris, I mean, I like what you said about relative to yourself, because Monday, after just trying to during COVID, I just tried to keep my business afloat, you know, and now it's in the stage where, okay, it's moving forward. And with that come all of these thoughts and all of these ways to go, and which way do I go? And people are saying, just pick one. And it just got to be a bit much because you see so much opportunity and you know your skill sets. So Monday, I just needed to shut it down. I just needed to just shut it down. And like 3 times my son came in and was like, "Are you okay? Are you okay?" But for me, from where I sat, I just needed to just shut everything down. But he was like, "Okay, do you need to make an appointment somewhere?" So again, how, you know,
What I'm hearing is a lack of self-care. And no offense to you in saying that you don't identify what or don't have a self-awareness, but self-care right now more than anything is paramount. COVID-19 literally hijacked every single one of our lives, our businesses, our homes, our families. Some of us, like myself, I lost my mother to COVID. So it can take you into a whirlwind, and you can become exhausted not only from COVID, but what you're seeing around you. You have millions of emotions that are rushing in and out of your brain on a daily basis. And so for some, um, stress manifests differently. For me, stress manifests through nightly headaches, right? So I had to learn that my body is responding to stress and it's not similar to everyone else. So one of the things that's important that you need to begin to do is check in with yourself on a daily basis. Typically, if you're my client, what I would say is set a timer for yourself, right? If you have, I don't know if you have maybe a smartphone, but just like we make appointments for our staff, our clients, make an appointment with yourself. Put it in your calendar and say, okay, at 10:30, I'm gonna take a moment for myself and take a couple of deep breaths. Obviously, when you're taking those deep breaths and you're filling your lungs with oxygen, you are allowing your brain to be stimulated. And so, you know, the amygdala is where a lot of these perceptions and emotions are stored, and it takes a little time for us to process that when we're under distress. So you want to start to breathe, listen to your breathing, put your hand on your stomach, make sure that you're taking long deep breaths, and just kind of give yourself a moment. And you will notice that as you're practicing that, your thoughts will start to clear out and you'll feel a lot less stress. But you got to remember to check in with yourself. I mean, down to feeling what's in your palms, what's at the bottom of your feet. We call that mindfulness. And because I'm telling you, at the end of the day, people don't believe this, but your body will shut down eventually. Um, and it'll shut down by way of, you know, sickness, upper respiratory infections are very common, headaches, locked jaws. I've seen all of this in my practice. So you want to just check in with yourself and know what your limits are. I know you want to work, 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 but at some point, if you don't give yourself that time, your body will take it.
Mhm. I'm another. Let me before I even say anything. I want to allow another question.
Yes, Dr. Harris, I had a question in the sense of, I just had this conversation yesterday with, true enough, COVID took over everybody's lives, and like now we have more, I'll say more tasks at hand in the day, and I'll be looking for where my time going, and by the time I get home, it's just like it's 12 o'clock. 1 o'clock, and I'm still up and trying to find the time to go to bed early. And I know you was stating about taking that time out to get your adequate rest, but as you come to work early and putting the time in, by the time you look around, you don't have no more time left, and you be trying to find out when is for me, what time I'm gonna have for myself, but it's very limited with all what's going on right now, especially with the business.
You hit on a lot of what I'm seeing. Thank you for your question, or your statements rather. What we're seeing is that employees are asking more of each other, and mostly because we have this perception that if we're at home, we're sitting there binge watching Power, and that's not the case. We're working harder at home more than ever, and what's happening is we're blending our work life with our family life. And that's also taking a toll on us because our families are being neglected. So ourselves are being neglected. So that's one of the things, or one of the myths, or the several myths about self care. People tend to think that self care is time consuming, and it's not. It does not require much um, time or a huge chunk of time out of the day for you to address your needs. Just like I spoke with Miss Naomi, 5 minutes, 5 minutes of breathing exercises. Um, you also have to understand you've got to set boundaries, right? We don't like to do that because we think, we're constantly trying to um, meet deadlines. And we have one thing about us and our people, we like to set the bar high, right? We already, as people of color, have to compete on several different levels. So we want to make sure that we're always on. However, we're also the largest population of heart attacks, heart disease, um, diabetes, and high blood pressure. If we go back and look at that, all of that stems from what? From the lack of self care, lack of proper nutrition, lack of proper sleep, and setting boundaries, right? Setting boundaries, what that means is you need to identify when you're going to turn it off and when you're going to turn it on. You shouldn't be on all the time, right? Um, one of the things, one of the characteristics of a good leader is being able to know or being able to be emotionally intelligent. And what that means is that I can look at myself and I can say, you know, hey Naomi, I'm tapped out. And you're talking to yourself, like I said, in third person. I know sounds kind of obscure, but telling yourself, Mr. Crane is tapped out, and Mr. Crane is going to take a 5 minute and maybe walk outside and get some vitamin D, you know. But I would encourage you to begin setting boundaries. Set aside some time to write what those boundaries are. Maybe you want to, instead of working till uh 12 midnight like myself, I may say, you know what, on Mondays and Wednesdays, I'm only going to work till 9 p.m. And then slowly you'll start to feel better, and you get addicted to that. You're like, oh, okay, I like what that feels like, taking care of myself.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I have it's funny, my daughter, earlier this year, for her Gold Award and Girl Scout, did something called the USAR project on high school and mental health. And she's talked about self-care. That's actually the first, I listened to it because I listened to her thing. And so ever since February this year, every 2 weeks, I get a massage. They come to my office, get a massage. I even started paying for it for my employees. So that's something I recently incorporated into my life. And it's actually helpful. At first, I was like, whatever, but actually, it's good. We have another question from Rhonda. Rhonda, you can unmute yourself and ask Dr. Harris a question.
Thank you, Attorney Goodwill. Thank you, Dr. Harris. Well, you kind of stole my thunder on my question because you kind of answered everything. I am a small business owner and I found myself working from home during COVID. And I would find myself going to bed around 2 o'clock in the morning and rolling right over about 6 and starting to work. I immediately told myself something is totally wrong because I've started to, like you said, see myself and say, wait, whoa, whoa, whoa. Um, I found myself in my bedroom, work all around me. And I started to feel like I was being smothered, if that makes sense. The work felt like it was crawling in on me. So I took everything, made me a small office down in my garage. I take walks, Goodwill. I get massages 2 times a month.
Yeah.
So this is really good information. I appreciate both of you, all of you, for being here and letting us have this exchange. This in itself is helpful. That's it. That's all. Y'all have a great one.
Thank you.
Dr. Harris, there's so many things from what you said I have questions on, but I want to ask one more, and then other people have questions. And I got to ask this question. So you're a clinical psychologist, okay? Psychologist. You already talked about the manifestation of stress or other things to physical ailments, headaches, breathing, upper respiratory. From a mental perspective, can you talk to us about detecting when it goes from I'll tell you what, I had to see the way I'm transparent, that's why I'm able to communicate with other people. I was going to run for an office and I decided to go to a psychologist so I could manage my time. I was afraid that if I ran for this office, things would affect. And in that, I'm not a graduate law school and everything. In that psychological, that series of visits,
Mhm.
I found out that I had ADHD. I think I was like 40 years old at the time. Then I went to a psychiatrist so that he can prescribe me the old school medicine for ADHD. My mama, who's a school counselor, thought I was crazy. She said, "You've been going to law school, graduate school. You didn't need it then. Why you need it now?" It was very helpful though, and it helps me. My question is, when do we need to go from the clinical aspect of adjusting the things we do and self-care to seeking medical attention? When do we know that it's something chemical versus anything else? You feel me?
Absolutely. And that's a very good question. So I would like to, I guess, revert back to you in your journey and ask you, when was that moment, or what happened in that moment that said, you know what, I need to go to a psychiatrist as opposed to me just going to therapy?
It was recommended by by someone like you. It was a while ago, and I was my emotional IQ from reading and things of that nature has increased, especially within myself. I usually use emotional IQ to understand how other people, how my actions affect other people. But then I just started to determine about internally, and because I was doing that, I was running for a office here in Harris County, and I wanted to make sure that my habits and behavior is one that I was able to balance, and I didn't think I had that balance. But in that process, so that was the intent. But in that process, I had to be strong because it was like 1,000 doggone questions. I didn't want I wanted to quit. The person who I was with, we were not demographically similar, so she irked me. You know what I mean? She made assumptions which bothered me, but I wanted to stay dedicated to the cause and to the mission. So I said I'm not going to quit. And so after dealing with those 100,000 questions and all these crazy questions you asked me, I started listening to her and talk about certain things in my past, and it came to the fact that I might need to go that next step with another aspect I didn't even come in for.
Okay.
So I didn't know. I thought my panic attacks or my procrastinations or my feeling like I had to go to the principal office on a roller coaster because I waited to the last minute to do things was something that helped me because I was always get things done, but at the cost of me having indigestion. And it was for years, from law school to graduate school to undergraduate school. My degree's in chemistry, by the way. So people say, oh, you got to go to chemistry, you're smart. But they don't know what I had to go through in getting that degree. You know what I mean? It was procrastination, last minute studying for tests, not going to sleep. So I wish I had kind of known before that time where that dividing line was, you know what I mean? And no one, I never had this conversation. I've never been in a conversation like this. So it may not even be possible, but how would a person in the conversation of mental health, does one go from the clinical aspect to it to, man, I might need some medicine?
Okay. So a couple of things you said. So I want to start by normalizing what you said.
Okay.
It's not uncommon for us to question our thoughts, and I applaud you for going even further in saying that you needed to seek help on a higher level, because very much so ADHD is all about the chemistry of the brain. And so I will also normalize what you said by saying most brilliant people have some mental health
I thought
concerns.
people said that just to make me feel better, but go ahead.
No, it's absolutely true. I think in some aspect, because we live in a uniform society and not a society of autonomy, meaning that we should rely on ourselves and our brilliance. We're taught, like I said, we're taught to be low maintenance and kind of dim our lights. And so what happens is we struggle with, okay, is what I'm thinking, is this idea I've come up with, and you and I've had this conversation about ideas, is this idea that I come up with, is this a crazy idea? I mean, who would have thought that you can go stand in line for 2 hours to get a $30 turkey leg? But people do it, right? So, I mean, years ago, I would have been like, I would never. But you'll see me in that line for 2 hours, because I mean, at the end of the day, it's a good concept. So I think I want to first normalize by saying brilliant people can be on edge. Here are some signs that you should take note of when wondering if you should see a psychiatrist. Inability to control emotions. You said a lot of this. That's why I asked you if you would share. Changes in sleep patterns. Are you self-medicating by using substances? Okay, also known as substance abuse. Is there changes in your performance at work? Are you withdrawing from social situations? You have unexplained physical illnesses. You said that, right? You said something, you said like acid reflux or something was going on in your stomach. A lot of what we feel manifests in our gut. Also excessive anxiety, worry, sadness. You may even have frequent nightmares, temper tantrums. And so, like I said, I have a list of about 50 things, but because we're all unique in our own, that's really kind of what I divert to. So if you've experienced any of those, I encourage you to seek some assistance.
But you should go to, I was told you should go to a psychologist first. I don't know where I read that from, but and then they will recommend, is that usually how it goes?
Absolutely, because what a psychologist has access to are several Likert scales, several personality scales that can measure, and of course, I won't get into the history of who created these scales, right? They
Yeah.
didn't look like you or I, but in general, in the general sense, they will test you to see if you fall on that spectrum.
Okay, I got to stop now. Time rolls when you really enjoying the knowledge. So anyone else want to have a question? Please use this opportunity to share or ask any question that you've been wanting to ask. Um, Anybody?
Dr. Harris, do you take PPO?
Yes, I
Blue
do.
Cross Blue Shield.
I do. That's one of my favorite ones, Blue Cross Blue Shield.
I have Blue Cross Blue Shield of Texas too. So and my employees.
You know what? I would have to say Blue Cross Blue Shield are one of the best out there for mental health. They are our supreme advocates in mental wellness.
Mhm.
Yes.
Anybody else? Trevor, you're on mute. Trevor, you're on mute. I'll unmute you, hold Trevor. Go ahead. Go ahead.
Shame on me. I'm supposed to be prolific when it comes to this platform.
I appreciate you.
Dr. Harris, I am moody. There are times when I can't get enough of people. Then there are times when I just want to be with me, myself, and I. Do I have a problem?
Actually, I think you have the solution. That is a proper balance in self-care and boundaries. It is okay to be quote unquote moody.
Okay.
I actually think that is very healthy. There will be times where you're tapped out and you want to sit with yourself and your thoughts and kind of process. So I applaud you for that.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Trevor brought something up. I just want to throw and ask, and then I'm gonna shorten my questions to give other people the opportunity to ask. But this is something that I personally don't hear asked until something happens. There's always been an issue, but COVID, the pandemic, I guess has the media has brought it out even more, and that is the workplace and mental health with employees or even people that come and visit. And now I'm extending this question I'm about to ask you to each other. Is it proper for, or should we be each other's brother's keeper? Is it something that we can detect in observing either an employee or a fellow MBE, like the ones here who I've seen and known, without being disrespectful, without being nosy, without crossing the line, without trying to knock them out of an RFP? So there's all kind. You talk about that distrust. How can is it? And I guess people don't think there's any true altruism out there, but how is it? Is it any way that we can help each other and help our employees or staff by suggesting certain things without being offensive?
So is this an open question? Are you asking my?
I'm asking you. You don't even
Okay.
want Mr. Doctor
Okay.
here.
Okay. So I would say, in my professional opinion, that we must be our brother's keeper. That is the only way that we're going to destigmatize mental illness in our community. But also, we have to remember, many of us, primarily all of us, people of color, have what's called generational fatigue, and it's almost as genetic as the melanin in our skin. So we have to remember that being our brother's keeper, we're speaking the same languages, right? We're speaking the same vibrational energy. We're speaking the same language in terms of how we operate. So if you and I were both in the same workplace and I identify that you are distressed, I may speak to you professionally and say, Mr. Pierre, can I have a conversation with you? And I would get your permission in asking, at this moment, can I be informal? And I would ask your permission. And then from there, I would say, it seems to me that you are in distress. Is there anything that I could, I would start from there. I've had several staff go through this. One even having to go to inpatient because of the things that she encountered at home with just the isolation. Many of my staff members are millennials, and so they don't believe they need anybody. They just kind of do their thing. And then when that pandemic hit, because they thrive in the social circles, and now they don't have access to that social interaction, they were dropping off like crazy. Like I was having people just impatient. But because I didn't address those mental health concerns, I knew it was there. I knew it was coming. um you've got to have that conversation. I honestly don't think that it's impeding or rude in any way. I actually think it's a form of care, especially when you're doing it to your employees. It shows that you take the human approach, if that makes sense. And they no longer see you as their boss, but more as, a leader, someone who's taking interest in what they care about.
Thank you. Trevor, you had another question?
Brother Goodwill, I didn't have a question. I just wanted to weigh in with my unprofessional opinion. Dr. Harris gave her professional opinion. So in response to the question, am I my brother's keeper? I would say, in my unprofessional opinion, I would say absolutely yes. Because what I have discovered as an educator is that when I can help, when I have the ability to help and I can help, when I help you, I'm also
Hello?
Oh goodness.
There's that bandwidth does it all the time.
Yeah.
Or maybe he'll come back. As Trevor's bandwidth resynchronizes, does anyone else have a question? Anybody? Dr. Harris, one of the things that, and thank you for answering that question. That's actually been something that has been on my mind for a while. When I was in the government, one of the things that I've observed, and as I get older, I realize that I've touched at least, I would say, on at easily 2,500 to 5,000 business owners. White, black, it don't matter. Latino. I touched them in many capacities, and I observed internally situations where it's unfair, and I was the only person there. I couldn't say anything, or if I said anything, I would be removed. I couldn't help anybody. As business owners, I realized that the external world don't see this. So I've seen situations where someone was qualified, they had everything, they had the pricing and everything, but because someone knew one public official, they got the project. And then when you told the other person, they just want to give up. My question to you is, can you offer ways that we can connect our business process or business model to our mental health? I know you talk about life balance and self-care, but in regards to what people say when I give my speeches, don't give up, persevere, those words, mechanically, are there things in which naturally, systemically being screwed as a business owner when you're trying to go after a project, knowing the odds are against you, still picking up your pieces and carry on? Because one of the things I have noticed is those who continue positively, without fail, they eventually get it. Either they adapt to the conniving ways that the other people have, or they, as the world changes, other decision makers be looking at. But the point is persistent and positivity. How can we, using your terminology, normalize that practice? Is it something that as business owners we can do as we seek those government contracts, or we seek those businesses, we can tie into our mental health so that one takes care of the other? Is that a correct? You understand my question? Sometimes I lose myself.
So no, it sounds like what you're asking is, how do we reconcile rejection?
Okay, that was a short way of saying, go for it. What you did just now was it. It was helpful. You clarified it. That's good.
So I would start by saying neither deny or obey emotions. Let's accept them. Let's start there. Okay. And then I would also say those who cannot tolerate acute temporary discomfort, you'll be condemned by chronic stress later, or chronic suffering. What that means is that if you're not okay with the way that things are going now, you cannot be a successful business owner, because part of being a business owner is rejection. Then we go back and, like you said, we recalibrate what our expectations are based on our outcome. But if we understand that we should neither accept or obey, I'm sorry, we should neither deny or obey, we should accept what actually is happening. And so I would start by asking myself, what's a different way of looking at this situation? You know, maybe someone else didn't, or maybe I didn't get that contract because I'm Black or brown, right? Maybe someone else did. But I also am a firm believer, you know, and not to throw religion out there, but what's for you is yours regardless. So in this sense, it's stretching you to understand that this wasn't me for this and what was not for me for a particular reason. And so I'm going to accept that rejection as a form of, or as a way of learning. Does that make sense?
It does. It's real. But I like what you said. I mean, I've never heard this before, and it goes to show you that I'm so glad, because this is I'm growing, and I pray that everyone here is growing as well. Neither deny or obey, but accept. That's deep. And so the other day, I was renewing my certification, and I've always been an advocate. But when I've gotten my own business, and then people knowing me as an advocate, they tend to ask me to help them out on certain things. Like, I don't work for the city anymore. I got my own business now. You know what I mean? But I was looking at one of the questions that they started to ask, and one of the questions is you had to turn in your income taxes and your financials, and then now I've been on both sides, and I am a lawyer, so they have. If you do not have your tax forms, then you have to turn in your 4560T, and then you have to provide financial statements, a reviewed, compiled, or whatever. And I said to myself, the advocate in me said, what hell small business will be able to pay the $15,000 to have a CPA? Dude, I'm just glad that I can press the daggone button on QuickBooks. And I get frustrated so much because the people who are there to level the playing field, because they want to stop fakers from taking advantage of the program, they also impeding us because we don't want to deal with that mess, okay? And I got depressed. And then all of a sudden I said, you know what, let me not worry about it. Let me just go and give them the financials. I know I can do it. You know, so I'm back to the question. Now I talked about the business, but now I'm talking about those entities that are there to protect us, dealing with the psychosis that comes with meandering through that bullshit. You know what I mean? Because it affects us as business owners, and especially minority business owners, because we're trying to benefit from programs that are meant for us, but at the same time, the things that they require from us, because we're sitting there trying to fix the copy machine and everything else, they're the very things that impede us. And so, I feel bad sometimes because I have the insight. Look, so I know certain things that others don't. How can we, raise our awareness so that we can be able to kind of know that or overcome that, so that we won't let those things stop us? What is a balance sheet? I know businesses that never even put together a balance sheet, but they know how to lay a brick. What? What ways that and that affects? I know it affected me. I'm telling you, I got depressed and I got pissed off, and I wanted to just fight the system and send a nasty email to the person I know at the city. But what I did was I calmed down. I said, look, I'm not trying to, save the world. I just want to get my recertification. And so that's what I did for myself. What about other folks? How do they deal with that? You know what I mean?
Well, you have to first remember that life is an obstacle course, even in the best of times. So as we're navigating through this process, and I know the process you're speaking of, because I've had to hire someone to try and help me with that process, because the language is is so much so that it's designed for us to fail. And so I identified that as exactly what it is. I didn't let it hold any value in my emotions. I didn't allow it to uh, be so negative that it swayed my decision in becoming certified. But I think it's important to have, such as yourself, a group of people that you can go to and kind of bounce this idea off of. You and I had this conversation, and you said that exactly what you're saying is that it's a long drawn out process that's very unnecessary. It's unnecessarily long, but it's necessary for us. So I
Mhm,
think to just stay on the course,
mhm.
because as you know, life is full of obstacles, and this is one that we will have to try to get over together. So just partnering, collaborating, networking with others who have done it, and asking them if there is some way that you can leverage their time, maybe by way of offering some of your intelligence, and saying, hey, if you can help me get through this process, I can help you on the back end with whatever else you need. And I tend to do that. I leverage some of my skill and offer it for free in exchange for maybe help in other ways. So collaboration, like I believe in just making sure that I have a group of people that I can consult with,
Mm,
and that's absolutely free. That goes back to my brother's keeper.
right, right. It's 101. Time moves by so fast. I want to give everyone opportunity for questions that you may have unique to either to yourself or things that I didn't ask or you hear from Dr. Harris. Want to give everyone opportunity. Any questions? I know there's some questions. I thought I saw a hand raised earlier. Uh, Dr. Harris, I think so Norman, you wanted to ask something?
I did.
Go ahead.
So, Dr. Harris, for the past, I would say, well, right before COVID, the mental health started, and it got extremely popular with COVID going on. Um, I took the mental health first aid training, and I was just amazed at some of the things that I learned. Are you seeing a trend where this is actually helping, or is it being met with skepticism? What is going on in the field of accepting mental health, uh, specifically with minority communities?
That's a very good question. And actually, what we're seeing is a trend of minorities actually seeking help. Like I said, I talked about the millennials. They have been instrumental in, they're making it's popular to say I have a therapist now. So I think a lot of it is the media, some of the folks that we see, like Kanye West, just to put him out there, he's struggling a lot with his mental illness, and that he talked about going to get therapy. And so I'm noticing a trend in the positive direction. Also, in the negative direction, I'm seeing a trend in clinicians who are completely burned out, because most of our calendars um, are busting at the seams. And so the other part of that, and I'll just throw, former President Obama, he created what was called the Affordable Care Act, and in that Care Act, he set aside about $14 million for what you took, that for first aid. I think, as you said, it was mental health first aid, for people, everyday people, to be trained and be made aware of what to look for in a person that may be experiencing a crisis. He also set aside that mental health benefit that a lot of us see inside of our built inside of our insurance. And so be an advocate for yourself and for your family, and saying if they're covered even by Medicaid, there is money that has been set aside. Even though our governor at the time did not want to accept it, it
Mhm.
was mandated in the Affordable Care Act that you must seek mental health, or mental seek someone in the mental health community. So we are seeing a positive trend, more people seeking, but on the other end of that, we have a shortage of clinicians.
Mm. Any other questions? Dr. Harris, it's a 105. It's scheduled to 1:15. I want to give you an opportunity to provide us with some closing thoughts, about your practice especially. But I would also like you to close us out with your, and you already started it with Naomi, about your observation and where should we go from here with continuing this path, I guess, to mental awareness and self-care with regard to our mental health. I mean, what are the next steps? Where should we go from here, and what your observations are? And you just close us out with that.
Okay. So are we opening for more questions, or you want me to just do the closing
Yeah, you
closing
do the
thought?
closing. If I see a
Okay.
hand that comes up or whatever like that, I'll definitely interrupt you. But right now, we're going to allow you to kind of do closing as far as your observations. Where do we go from here? And I want you to talk about your practice as well.
Okay, okay. So I actually wanna just talk briefly about my practice. So we actually were able to sustain throughout COVID. Our business actually became more successful because the niche market that I kind of went out for was the foster care population. And a lot of our clients are children who for whatever reason or another had been neglected. So as you know, there's a large number of children that go monthly unadopted. So what we do is we basically go in and we help with the transition phase of kind of getting them acclimated into the new home. What I'm seeing is a lot of foster parents are culturally incompetent. They're getting our children, they're medicating our children. And basically neglecting them. But because they're already part of the system, there's not much we can do. So there's a lot of exploitation there. But we're working to change that. And that's really what the company does. On the back end of that, I have a private practice that does focus on sexual health, mental health, mood disorders, personality disorders, all of that good stuff. I also do couples intensives. So either you're trying to enter into a relationship and you want to establish agreements, or you're already in a marriage that's highly conflict. So if any of you are interested in therapy, you can reach out. I provided my office number and my address, and I do free 15-minute consultations. And so as far as closing thoughts, I want us to remember that avoidance is very appealing because it brings us quick relief, right? And part of just being a human and being a part of being a human being is that we are biased to um short-term calculations, meaning that we want those immediate gratifications. So if you're feeling as though you're overwhelmed, um, don't seek that immediate, or that avoidance or that immediate gratification. Look and see what it is, especially if it's an ongoing issue. Look at what it is and begin to tell yourself that maybe you should talk to someone. One thing I don't want people to do, and especially now because we've lifted this, mask mandate, and now we're saying we're coming out of this pandemic, is I don't want you to avoid the inevitable. Things are different and they're going to be different for a very long time. And the feelings that you're having, the anxiety, the hypervigilance, that's normal. Many of us are feeling that. And so I just want you to remember that I guess, I go back to that, to the emotions, and they hold great value in our lives, and they tend to sway our decision making. But tap inside of what that emotion, or where that the source of that emotion is, and it's okay to talk about it. Distressing feelings, unhealthy habits, um, those can be coping mechanisms. And so we want to address them and make sure that we are uh, not going in a negative direction. And so I just want to end with that.
Dr. Harris, I want to thank you first for accepting my call, my request, your answer to prayer. As I stated in my opening, this has been a desire for me since 2018 to have this discussion, but not knowing how to do it. Believe it or not, the pandemic has created a opportunity, a forum for us to have these exchanges safely, but also being able to capture people who may not necessarily felt comfortable coming live in person. I want to thank everyone who decided to come here. I hope that what you've learned today and what we received from Dr. Harris not only has strengthened you, but has given you the tools to help other people. So first, I want please give Dr. Harris a hand, please. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. As usual, I want to let you guys know about the next upcoming events that you'll hear about. And all of these are going to be free events. I decided to do my Success in Business all free. Then in end of October, end of August, we're going to get something to talk about trademarks. I am a licensed patent attorney. I do a lot of trademarks. It's my passion, especially for business owners. But I'm going to do a workshop on having people understand how to do that. So you can be able to do it yourself. You can still, look to people like me, but I want to talk about your brand and protecting your brand and everything like that. So we're going to have a hour-long lunchtime discussion on trademark law and intellectual property. In September, I'm going to have another discussion about contracts and contract terms and contract law, certain provisions you should look at, especially when doing government contracting. And hopefully, depending on how this pandemic it's out, we'll have a live success in business event for success in business at Missouri City. October 6th is the date that we plan, where it would be something similar that I did in May of 2019. 2020 had to be canceled, but we'll have a lot of decision makers, purchasing agents, and everything like that around to be able to talk to you about opportunities and business for you. In addition, we'll have workshops about different aspects, finance. We might have a mental health workshop again to talk about joint ventures. And so it will be the same as 2019, but bigger and better. I want to thank you again for sharing your lunch with me, lunch with each other. I hope this has been informative, like all my other success in business. So I wish you well. And as always, I wish you success in business. God bless. Thank you. I will send everyone the link and the text messages. I'll also send everyone the link to download this video. It'll also be on my social media platforms as well, where you'll have access to it. So thank you again, and I look forward to seeing you again. Bye-bye.
Thank you.